Hello and welcome back to a new watercolour paint along. Today I'm doing this one and I'm going to do it step by step if you want to follow along. You can also download the line drawing free of charge on my Patreon page. I will link that below, so you don't need to actually draw the outlines yourself if you don't want to. I'm also using Daniel Smith watercolours for this one. So I will list all the colours on the screen now, and I will also put them in the description below. You don't have to use the same colours as me, but if you do want to know which ones I'm using, those will be listed for you. I'm also adding a little bit of shimmer and glitter from these two sets. This is the Alice set, this is the Fragments set, and I'm using 4 paint brushes. So just a mixer brush for mixing the paint, a small mop brush, this is a Da Vinci Casaneo size 0, a number 5 round brush and a small liner brush. And the paper is Arches 100% cotton paper. I'll list everything down in the description below, and then you know exactly what I'm using. So once you've printed off the outlines, if you print out on an A4 piece of paper, we want it so that the flowers are almost at the bottom, just a small gap, and then try and centre it that way. Make some fold lines at the edges so you know exactly where to trim the paper. So I'm using a fairly dark graphite pencil, this is a B3, covering all the lines on the back. Tape that down, and then with a fairly sharp point on your pencil, go over the lines but press quite hard. And then if you press firm enough, there'll be a faint line on your paper. Now I'm going to go over the lines with a mechanical pencil. And I'm going to make the lines quite dark because I do want them to stand out and create a little bit of an outline. I forgot to add the washi tape around the outside, so I'm going to do that now. So this particular line here, this is the top edge of the grass. I don't want this line to be strong, so I'm just making this one really faint because I want the paint to cover that one up. Then the rocks here, everything else is going to be really dark. Just the grassy edge, faint, and then there's another grassy edge here. I'm just going to do the top part of that and just leave that really faint. And then I'm going to put an extra line down here and a line under here. Next I'm going to add masking fluid to the little flowers, so I'm using Winsor Newton. So just dab a little blob onto each of these. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it goes over a little bit, that's fine, because they're just distant flowers and they're all different uneven shapes. And then I'm going to just dab in some random little smaller dots here and there. We want a little blob. This is going to be more flowers here in the distance, so it'll just be kind of a strip of one colour. So we'll just create a bit of a strip across there, just like that. Now that's got to completely dry, and it might take a while. We absolutely can't paint on it until it's completely dry. Right, that is now completely dry, and I'm going to start with the sky. So I need to mix up the colour for the sky, which is going to be ultramarine, and I don't want the blue to be that bright. I want it to be quite a muted sky, so I'm going to add some Jane's grey to that. So ultramarine, a little bit of Jane's grey to dull that down. And it's quite a strong concentration because I'm going to drop that into a wet page. A little bit more Jane's grey. Right, with the size 0 mop brush, size 0, just a fairly small mop brush, I'm going to wet the whole of the sky area. Carefully go around the house. I've got a bit of a puddle here, so I'm going to absorb some of that back up. Dab off the excess. And do that again. So I'm holding that to the light, and I can see that I've missed a little bit there, so you can kind of see that it's got an even layer of water over there. And then I'm just going to go in with the blue colour that I've made, and I want it fairly weak. I want quite a light sky, and you can make it streaky like this, just back and forward. I'm going to make it a tiny little bit darker at the borders. And then just kind of blend that in. Now I'm going to leave that to completely dry. If you notice, it's a tiny little bit lighter at the bottom as well, which is good because the sky usually is a little bit lighter at the bottom. So I'm going to completely dry that with the heat gun. Okay, so I'm going to do the sea now. I've actually just done the sea and the camera wasn't recording, so I've had to pull the colour back out, and I'm going to start again so I can show you what I did. So for the sea, I'm mixing some cerulean blue, and then from the little fragments set, I'm going to add some of this Sapphire Fragments, which I've already pre-soaked, which is why it's nice and soft. So I'm going to get a little scoop of that on the corner of the brush, and that's actually a little bit too much. Take that lump off, it's too much. And I'm going to mix that into the cerulean blue. And this is going to make the water really glisten. Right, start again. So I'm just using a round brush, number 5 for this, and I'm just going to paint that in. Then I'm just going to get a tiny little bit of this blue that was left over from the sky on the tip of the brush. Kind of just drop that across the horizon line just a little bit. And then dry that off as well. Next I'm going to paint in the rocks. Now we don't need much paint for this because they're not very big. I'm going to use 2 colours, Sepia and Jane's Grey. Using a tiny little liner brush, get some of the Jane's Grey. I'm going to paint across the bottom area of each rock. I'm going to do each rock separately. Just paint across the bottom and then up one side, the right hand side, like that. Then I'm going to clean the brush, get some of the sepia, drop that into the top area. Now we want it to be quite light, we don't want it to be that that dark. So I'm going to now blend that down and then let it join into the grey. That one's a little bit dark, too much grey, so I'm using a clean brush and I'm going to lift some of that out. And add a little bit more sepia. And then lift a little bit out of the top area, just to give it a little bit of dimension. So each time I do this, and then cleaning it off, dabbing it in water and then cleaning it off on the sponge so that the brush is nice and dry, and then I can pull a little bit more of the paint out like that. So I'll do that for all the others, just a small amount of the grey. Right, next I'm going to move on to the house. And I'm going to use that Jane's Grey and I'm going to make it really, really watery. And then on this side of the house, I'm just going to paint a super, super light layer. We can take that into those little eaves part there. In fact, that's a little bit too dark. I'm going to lift that out. I've changed my mind. That was a little bit too dark, so I'm going to use what I used for the sky. That looked a little bit dirty using that grey, so it's going to be like the palest of blue. And then a little bit underneath here as well. Just go down a little bit further. Okay, now that that's dry, I'm going to move on to the roof. Now this is going to be 3 different colours. We don't need much because it is only tiny. So we want some Quinacridone gold, some Aussie red gold, that's quite thick, and we're going to use the Quinacridone burnt orange, but I'm going to take that straight from the pan, so don't need to put that in the palette. So starting with the bottom section of the roof, I've got the Quinacridone gold. I'm just using a tiny little brush. And then the Aussie red gold at the top. While that's still wet and it will blend in. And then I'm getting the Quinacridone burnt orange. And that's going across that little top bit. And then just let it join in and it will just blend in to the colour below. If you want this top bit quite strong, add another little bit in across the top and then just kind of pull it down a little bit, just drag it down. With this edge fairly dark with the Quin burnt orange under here as well. It's important not to have it too watery on your brush, or it'll spread too far into any wet paint. And then this little piece of roof here in the darker colour as well. And then I'm gonna get the Aussie red gold and paint the little door. And then painting the little windows with Jane's Grey, a strong mix of Jane's Grey. Oh, made a mistake there, unfortunately. Try and lift that out. Okay, that's the house done, looking quite good. Now I'm going to move on to the grass. I'm going to use two colours, Serpentine Genuine fairly strong mix, and Undersea green, which is quite dark. Now this one is going to be a little bit tricky. This is going to be the trickiest part of the painting because I'm going to wet the grass area, drop the paint in, but I'm not going to wet all the parts, just some of it. So get the water on, leaving a dry strip across the top and a dry strip across the bottom. So you can see we've got this dry strip here and then the dry strip here. You can see the water's pooling up there. I don't want that, so just going to absorb some of that back out. Right, now I'm going to grab some of the Serpentine Genuine. That's quite strong. I want it to be like really super light in this area. So I'm going to add a little bit of water and spread that out into the wet area. So super light in that wet area. Then get some of the stronger colour and drop that in the drier section, but don't go all the way to the bottom, still leave a little strip. We're leaving that little strip at the bottom for the the much darker undersea green and dropping that in there, so to do it that way, and it all makes a nice blend. Lift some of that undersea green up a little bit. Then we're going to get the undersea green just on the tip of the brush and drop that in right across the top and make it uneven. Just dot that on that dry area. And get the Serpentine Genuine and join that on. And let it run into the wet area here. Just kind of join that on. And then blend that in. Now I've cleaned the brush out and I'm going to take some of this out across here a little bit because I just want it to be very, very light in that area. Just blend it all together, and then I'm going to get a little bit of the Serpentine Genuine on my brush and just add a little bit of darkness under this area here. So it's important that the paper isn't too wet, because then you lose control if the paper's too wet. And I've just got some undersea green and made it even darker in the very, very bottom, and I've stroken up like this to make a few little grass blades. Okay, that's what it looks like so far. Now I'm going to leave that to dry. Next I'm going to add some texture on top of the grass. So undersea green again with the tiny little liner brush. I'm going to add some little pieces of grass and stalks just here and there. And then with the round brush, getting some of the Serpentine, and it's quite watery, and I'm just going to drop in some texture with the tip of the brush in this area. Let some of it come down a little bit into the lighter part, just to give a little bit of texture in kind of different shapes. And then while that's still wet, get some of the undersea green and just drop it into some of those parts. And then I'm going to do that again just for this area. And I've got a clean brush. I'm going to blend just some parts, not all of them, just make little blends. Now undersea green again on the little liner brush. I'm going to paint in, I'm going to make it quite watery in some parts and a little bit stronger in other parts, but I'm going to add in lots of stalks on these flowers, all going in different directions, thin strokes. I'm doing this with the side of the brush as well, just to give a bit more texture. Now we need to remove the masking fluid so we can paint in the gorgeous flowers. I'm going to use this, I think it's called, I'll put the name on screen of what it's called because I always forget what this is called, but it's absolutely brilliant for removing masking fluid. Okay, so that's the masking fluid off. So next we're going to start on the flowers. I'm going to have some orange flowers here, but I need to add some more green because it won't be a complete block. So I'm going to try and get rid of the harsh edge. So I've got some of the Serpentine. I'm going to try and get rid of some of that harsh edge and just leave some little gaps for the flowers. Now the colours for the flowers. So I'm using the Mad Hatter, this orange, and this is from the little Alice set, and it's a lovely metallic orange and it's got gold flecks in it. So I'm going to use this as a base colour. Also some of the Aussie red gold. Oh no, I've just painted in the flowers and the camera wasn't recording. I just absolutely cannot believe it. It's not that difficult to do. I can just explain what I did, because to paint the whole thing again just to fill these in, so I just used 3 different colours, those 3 different colours. So there's the Mad Hatter, the Aussie red gold and the Pyrrol red, and as you can see it's just dotted in. So I just put down a layer of the Mad Hatter watery, and then I just dropped in little dots of Aussie red gold, and then at the very end you can see here where I've just dropped in a few tiny little bits of the Pyrrol red, just dotted it about. And now I'm going to go back in with the Mad Hatter a little bit more concentrated. I'm just going to add some little dots just on the orange bit, just so we'll get some nice little shimmery gold flecks on these flowers. I can't believe that happened. I just can't believe it. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to just see what I've actually done. Just dotting it on like this. It's nothing highly skillful. And then on this little area here, I just dotted the Mad Hatter there. I'll just put a little bit more. So it just gives the impression that there's another bank of flowers in the distance. I'll put some of the Aussie red gold on there as well. I'll just dot that over the top. I'm also going to just get some of the Aussie red gold and put a few flowers here. So I'll give that one final blast with the heat gun to dry it off. And there we go. There's the final picture. Get the tape off. There we go. So that's the final picture. So we've got the glimmer in the water and the Mad Hatter in the flowers. So we've got a bit of a metallic look to them. Okay, so that's the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget that you can download the line work for this on my Patreon page. And my next video will be up in a couple of days' time. So thank you very much for watching.